She's so hot.
She's actually attractive.
She's
Lock me up,
to
girl.
what extent his family knew about this horrific attack.
Chilling video shows what appears to be the moment the suspect threw a Molotov cocktail into a peaceful group of Jewish demonstrators.
Jesus Christ.
See, his face
What's
is
wrong
all-
with you, dude?
And later himself on fire, allegedly yelling "Free Palestine" at the crowd and injuring a dozen people before he was taken into custody. Authorities saying they recovered a weed sprayer backpack containing flammable liquid along with 16 unused Molotov cocktails. Solomon is an Egyptian national and was allegedly in the country illegally after overstaying
Get him out.
his visa. ABC News has learned he appeared to record pro-terror messages just hours before.
Yeah, so that's how he got that burn.
I think you'll have a hard time seeing details about this story on MSNBC.
What's your thought of he's got 5 kids. One wants to be a doctor here in this country. What are your thoughts on what to do with his family if they didn't know?
That sucks, dude. His kids, I mean, I don't know.
You know what I'm saying?
But that's the risk he took. He put his whole family in jeopardy.
Yeah.
Here's okay.
I would say so.
People get attached to that, but look at it from a different angle. If he had 5 kids and he was a PDF file, or he was a drug addict that committed his 7th felony, we'd find housing for those children. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not open.
That's my question.
People get so like, but you can't separate them. It's like, yeah, we can. And we do pretty
Case by
often.
case, yeah.
When guys are dangerous and gals are dangerous, you do that. you
Yeah,
know?
because there's a lot of things like get the kids out of here too. It's like, well, hold on. Like that guy might be a fucking tyrant.
But you got to set a standard. So because he went to such extreme measures, like he knew by doing this, and hopefully it detracts others from doing this.
So-
hey, if you do this, not only are you out, but your entire family,
So
you fucking
Israel
moron.
started what Israel would do started in 2000, I think, in the second Intifada, when Palestinians blew themselves up, they would come and bulldoze that Palestinian suicide bombers' family's home. They'd come in and bulldoze the whole home. So they sent a message saying, if you do this, your family's going to pay and they're going to lose their house.
Correct.
And it's pretty harsh, but
As it should be.
yeah, but it's just if the family's here illegally anyway, then they got to go back anyway.
Can we send him to somewhere completely relevant, like random?
No,
Just for let's send him. What if they go to New Zealand?
No, you never do that. You always send them back to their country of origin.
I know, but I'm saying, what if we open up that program?
You can't, because
like a farm system.
You'd have to have permission
like they go to
from that
Toronto.
country.
Toronto's
What the fuck? Who are these guys? Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. They're cool, man.
Well, sometimes
the
they
dad,
can get,
not so much, but the rest of
sometimes
them.
they can get custody. They're not going to see their dad again. Their dad's going away.
But again, is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing. He's a fucking asshole who firebombed people. And you can't. My thing in this country is that what we have to realize, I'm sorry, is that if you are in this country on a visa, if you are a guest in this country, you're not allowed to say anti-Western. Well, let's put it this way. If you say anti-Western, anti-American things, and you're advocating for the destruction of this country from within, maybe you shouldn't be in this fucking country. Like, your visa is a privilege. You're not a citizen.
Maybe you shouldn't, but to be fair, and you're a pretty well-traveled guy.
Yeah.
You're a worldly dude. Isn't what makes us I say no. Isn't what makes us the greatest country the fact that you can?
Yes. I'll quote Eric
Because even other
Weinstein.
very civilized, very advanced countries, you can get in serious trouble for saying shit. And I love America that you can. If you say, fuck the president, I hate this fucking government, fuck you guys.
I agree with that. But
if you're American, that's fine.
Here's the thing: the Secretary of State does reserve the right to revoke your visa if they consider you to be in any way
a threat,
right?
Well, there's a difference.
And so it does fall into this really constitutional thing. You have the right to free speech, regardless of whether or not you're a citizen or not, I believe, in this country. And it's a murky area. However, there is privileged status with a visa. And the powers that be that grant that visa can revoke that visa. They can decide that you are. So if you're that guy, Khalil Muhammad or whatever, he was disruptive on a campus. He was inciting people to disrupt everyday life on campus.
Sure, there's a difference. I mean,
but it's a murky thing, right? It is complicated. It's like, hold on, because we do have free speech laws. It's a tough one.
But look, let's extrapolate what we even have within our personal freedoms. I think if you don't like someone, you have the freedom right in this country. Once you get into threats, once you start to threaten someone's safety with your words, that's a different story. And I think the same thing goes for if you want to talk about how shitty America is, I think you should feel free to do that. That's how awesome our country is. Go ahead, talk about it. Once you start to threaten with your words the safety of Americans and American
Yeah.
people, then we
it's
get
very
into
complicated because you're allowed to criticize our country. Eric Weinstein said the best thing I've ever heard about this. He says, America, the magic of the United States is you have the right to burn the flag. You have no interest in burning.
Yeah.
Because it's a great country.
Yeah.
So comparatively, I think people need to take a look. Does the United States have problems? Sure. Are we above criticism? Of course not. Should we be criticized? Of course. Should you be allowed to criticize your president, the administration, without paying a price for it? Of course. But I do think that if you're a guest in this country, I do think that's different.
Yeah, sure.
You know, Douglas Murray said, if you're screaming Allahu Akbar on my streets and you're organizing, and you are in the London streets screaming Allahu Akbar, that's a war cry. It's a war cry, and I don't want you in my country. I sympathize with Charles Murray on that because, Douglas Murray, because in most of those cases, you've got people calling for Sharia law in England. They're calling for Islamic law.
When you talk about, though, here's my big problem, because I got to be honest, Douglas, who the fuck am I? I've never served in military. I've never been in government. I've never really traveled. The small amount that I've traveled to Muslim majority countries has been like this much. But I will say this. You're talking about tens of maybe hundreds of millions of Muslims around the globe. And the majority of them live in a way that you would not even necessarily know, even if they're devout, because the true practice of being Muslim isn't something that would call for most people to take recognition of it.
What is that noise?
It's AC. It kicks on for a little bit. It'll turn off. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But
Is that fucking us? Probably, right?
But as long as we acknowledge it, it's just AC for a little bit.
How's that?
Don't worry, we're going to work this
Sorry
out.
about the noise.
we're going to work it
guys.
out.
We're going to work it out. It's our
Because
only
Mike's
second
saying something
time.
important.
I just think that, when you're talking about what these men that Douglas Murray is taking note of is such a small fraction, and because their behavior and their rhetoric is so outside the lines of what most Muslims live and do, it's perfectly okay in my eyes to be like, yeah, these guys are fucking a little sketch. We should take notice. Maybe get a little bit more surveillance on the guys who are screaming war cries outside my front window,
Yeah, it's for me. I'd be like, hey, are you calling for? You want to turn this into a violent thing? We can do that here.
Yeah.
We can do it. Don't fuck with the Brits and the Irish. You get them going, they will meet you halfway.
Yeah.
They'll fucking the indigenous Brits and the Irish come alive when it comes to war.
Thousands of years of being
Don't
bad
fuck around.
dudes.
Yeah.
Bad
What else you got, Jed?